Good morning and God bless. Welcome to the Front Page Saturday Town Hall Edition. I'm Dominique DiPrima, and I'm so glad that you could be here. We are doing this ongoing series on Saturday mornings. You probably know that by now, focusing on the COVID-19 crisis, as well as, we have ventured into the movement for Black Lives. But this has primarily been a series meant to address issues around our response to COVID. How do we get through this in the best possible manner? What is the way that we can share resources with each other and share information and knowledge with each other? And that is exactly what we are doing. Want to really thank the city of Los Angeles, the county of Los Angeles, the Independent Professionals Association, and our partners at Community Build for helping us, and all of the sponsors that have gotten us to where we are right now with this incredible opportunity. I'm so pleased to be able to be here with you. Love that song from Terrace Martin. We will be hearing from him later in the show, which I'm really looking forward to. Looking forward to all of our guests. Our topic today, where are the good jobs? Finding employment under COVID-19, finding and keeping it. That's what we're talking about today. We'll offer some resources, and we would love to hear from you. 520-KJLH, 520-5554. I'm Dominique DiPrima. Hopefully you know that. And please introduce our first guest. He's been a partner since we started doing this early this summer. He's the president and CEO of Community Build. He's a native Angelino. He's been involved with civic matters that impact young people, economic development, social justice, and literacy for over 30 years. Good morning, Robert Sausedo.
Good morning. How are you?
Blessed and highly favored. It's great to hear your voice, and I'm sure you're hearing this all week long because in our community, especially in the African American community, the job situation just is not that encouraging right now, right?
Yeah, it's definitely challenging at this time for many.
It's challenging for many, and you guys have done a great job at Community Build offering, food and different kinds of resources for people that are struggling. But if you were me right now and I was in need of a job in the middle of this pandemic, where would you start?
Well, you can start with Community Build, number one. If you go to hiring at communitybuild.org and just send us an email with your resume and contact information, someone will reach you. We are hiring some temporary positions, but I think there's a two-pronged approach here. One is a job for right now, and then a job for later, right, or career opportunity. So we'll talk a little more about what that means. So it's really identifying what are the immediate things like census workers, some of the things that you could take on right now, and at a more local level. And then more broadly, keep in mind organizations like Metro and local government agencies, a significant portion of their workforce is reaching the age of retirement over the next 3 to 4 years. So many of them are still hiring in spite of what's going on with COVID. They'll need to do that to replace critical workforce, to include Metro's, for example, bus drivers all the way up to the senior suite. So it's really about just planning this out and being prepared to take the time that is needed to do so. And then also for those who are on unemployment, this is a great time to go back and take some online courses, reevaluate your skills personally, and look in a direction of learning that aligns with a career path that is more suitable for you for the future.
Yeah, we hear a lot about that job training, and I know it's always good to pivot, but I feel like to some extent, what are we training for? Are we training for after COVID? Are we looking down the road saying these things are not going to come back, so we need to go ahead and train for these things? What are we, what's the strategy around that?
Yeah. So the strategy, and Dominic, that's a very good question, because there are some things that probably won't come back or will come back very differently. I think right now, for example, I know some restaurant workers that have gone back to training to become CNAs and nurses and surgical techs. Healthcare you can never go wrong with healthcare if that's something that's of interest to you. And those folks are landing employment, and they're landing employment while they're training. So it's really a function of what's of interest to you and really defining what that is for yourself, and then doing the homework to identify what is the trajectory in terms of long-term employment. For those who have, 15, 20, 30 years left of work opportunity, start looking at things around infrastructure. We still have a number of construction-related jobs that not only just buildings, but, roadways, et cetera. Caltrans, for example, is hiring for people to continue to work on the roads. So there's still a high need for that type of work, but you're going to have to look at what is the long-term viability of those jobs. And then for jobs that, as technology takes over, I think what we as African Americans have to really look at is we're probably the most impacted as the marketplace shifts. So reports are demonstrating that we'll be the most impacted over the next 10 years because we work mostly service-based jobs in service industries. And many of those jobs will be taken over by technology. And so it's a matter of now looking ahead and planning for it. And it's going to take some rolling up the sleeves and making some sacrifices right now for later.
Yeah, I mean, I love the point about healthcare. Sometimes I feel like, yes, it's true. We need to train, and I want to talk to you about more resources people can go to for training. But sometimes I feel like that is like, we hear the Trump administration and others saying, "Oh, just train," but train for what? I like the idea of healthcare because those are jobs that can never be taken overseas. People that are sick are going to be sick here. Sadly, or, elders that need caring for, they're going to need caring for here. And when you talk about infrastructure, you're talking about all the building that's going around, not just Metro, but the airport and the things that are going to be actually speeded up because of the Olympics, right?
Correct. That's exactly right. But beyond the Olympics, many of these jobs are going to, you've got 30, 40 years worth of infrastructure work, around plumbing and roadways, et cetera. So these are long-term careers and with very high earning potential.
So every time we hear about pipes bursting somewhere, we should look at that as an opportunity.
Yeah,
okay, so, Robert Sausedo.
Yeah. Let me give you an example. Because people are working from home more, I was talking to a couple of plumbers that I deal with, and they've told me, Robert, we are busier than we've ever been, because people are working from home, they're having more stoppages, and they're loving life, right, as entrepreneurs, and for their staff, keeping them busy. So it's really looking at that. Trades is always an option. I mean, yes, we want our young people to go to college and get training, but we've got to look at education differently too. What will put you to work now or within 6 months, a year, 12 months, and still allow you to understand that, life is about lifelong learning, right? And you can't be stuck in one set of skills because things do change. We've watched during this COVID crisis a whole new potential economy rise about this, with people doing various podcasts and digital streaming. I mean, there's a whole new line of production type of people coming online to support that. So it's just really taking the personal responsibility to learn it, get engaged in it, and then stick to it. Okay, so a lot of good stuff there. I mean, actually, it's funny because when my plumber came, he said the same thing. He's like, I'm so busy, everybody's clogging up their stuff. And those seem like crazy things, but sometimes, the inconveniences or challenges of a situation like a pandemic do point to opportunities. Where would you go to get trained for stuff like that? I mean, where would you direct people? Well, there's a variety of resources. So, the city and the county both have work source centers that offer what I call right now readiness training for available jobs. So that's one place. You've got your community colleges. And so, of course, much of that is some online learning. And then you've got your private colleges. So many of those are associated with, schools that you pay and get loans for to go to a 6-month program. But there's just I think if people go online and begin to search job training, call the city and find out through the work source departments, what type of training they have available. And also understand, because there's a need for some folks, there's a need for a job right now. Maybe they've run out of unemployment. I saw a report yesterday that said unemployment was down to 8.3%. And in my mind, I was like, well, that's not a real number, because that just means a bunch of people came off of unemployment, right? And they're just not being counted anymore. But it's really a function of going after the training for right now, but with an eye towards the future of being an active learner and taking responsibility for that for the rest of your life.
You know, one of the things we talk about on the weekday front page show, which, by the way, family, if you're not familiar, it's 4:30 a.m. to 6, Monday through Friday. And one of the things we talk about is, you know, these kind of jobs you're talking about, construction and plumbing and electrician. A lot of these are union jobs, and it seems like African Americans are not well represented. Maybe a lot of people feel like we're being pushed out or discriminated against out. But, you know, maybe there is a way in, and we're just not, you know, we're not finding it. What would you say about that?
I would say to a large degree, some of the appearance of that is true. But I will say that labor has really been aggressive about creating opportunities for not only African Americans, but even those who have a need for a second chance, you know, and help get them into the trades. So there's a number of intervention agencies out here that provide access into those types of jobs. Skip over at Second Call is a good example of that, you know, and so, you know, it's really a matter of showing up, understanding you're not going to get the big paying job on the front end. And one of the things that I do see is people show up expecting to make the top salary without the training or the sacrifice. And I spent a lot of time talking to people about making the sacrifice. I didn't get to be president of Community Build because I just woke up one day and they liked me. It took a number of years of training and development and work to get here. And that's the same thing it's going to take there. I think if, you know, going through the apprenticeship programs, taking an active lead to research out these various unions and see what lines up with you. You know, everyone can't be an electrician. And, of course, understanding the soft skills. You know, to become an electrician, for example, you have to be proficient in Algebra 1. So you know from a soft skills development standpoint, which washes out a lot of people, you have to go get those soft skills and be willing to spend the time to do so. And then there's the apprenticeship side of that, you know, discussion. So there are many steps that a person has to take, but you have to have the willingness to do so and the stick-to-itness to get through the process.
Yeah, I mean, some of it is mindset. That's why I do like the LA Black Workers Center, you know, the Ready to Work program, where they kind of give you a lot of what you're calling soft skills that some people just never got a chance to learn. You know, and by the way, I know they're doing one September 16th. They're doing an orientation in case you want to get into that. That Ready to Work program for young people or people who have never, you know, held a certain type of jobs, or people who are, you know, formerly incarcerated, reentering. It's a great opportunity to actually, you know, learn some things that you might never realize you didn't know about how to present yourself at a job or how to get that job. It's the orientation is the 16th, and I know you can go to laworkerscenter.org to get that information, lablackworkerscenter.org, or you can call them 323-752-7287. That's 323-752-7287. It's, you know, to some degree, these kind of programs are, you know, they're great resources, and we don't always know about them or utilize them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another component is, for the listeners, it's very, very important that you become a proficient at understanding all of the ballot initiatives, because many of them do affect workers. So there's the employee side of the conversation. There's the entrepreneur side of the conversation, right? And there's the independent contractor side of the equation, all of which are being impacted or have been impacted by legislation that we have to stay in front of to make sure that we don't lose jobs like Lyft drivers and Uber drivers and Grubhub and those types of opportunities, the gig economy. independent contractors. 50% of nonprofits, more than 50% of nonprofits use independent contractors, but because of the recent AB5 legislation, many of them had to let their independent contractors go. The entire workforce of people who work independently is independent contractors. So these are things that we have to really take some personal responsibility as voters and to stay in the game and to make sure that we keep these kinds of opportunities in front of us. And then the other thing is, what if you have small business ideas, looking at organizations like Vermont Slauson Economic Development Corporation, or PCR or PRC, forgive me, I think I said that wrong, PCR, Pacific Coast Regional, where you can get some training around a business idea that you have, and look for organizations who will incubate you and help you move the needle, and understand that, when you start a business, it's not overnight success, it's not overnight income, but if you make the sacrifice, you're going to get ahead of the curve in a very short period of time.
Yeah, I think sacrifice is part of it. Let's circle back a little bit. I talked with, Dr. Ben Chavis this past week on the regular weekday front page, and he was talking about AB5 too and some of the other legislation. When you say get in front of it, what do you mean? Because honestly, a lot of our people already work as Lyft drivers. They work as, every time I say 75% of the time when I order Postmates, I see somebody black coming, at least in my community, TaskRabbit, all these kind of, sort of, I guess, independent jobs. So how do you get rid of something like, or fix something like AB5 and then still protect those workers so that they're paid and protected, with the proper PPE and all that?
Well, I think that's a very good question. And one way to stay engaged is the Independent Professionals Association, which I believe you have the website on your KJLH webpage. Very important work being done there to try and either overturn or expand the people from a work classification standpoint. But this isn't just a California conversation anymore. This is a national discussion. When you pass legislation that impacts people who, a lot of folks don't want to work a regular job. They want to do things like Uber and Lyft, and they should have the flexibility to do so. And when AB5 went into effect, it basically made it so that companies like Lyft and Uber have to make their drivers employees. And on one hand, the model was not set up to do that. I know in our case, we're looking at, for example, to bring on somewhere between 80 and 90 part-time temporary workers for a 3-week project. I've got to bring them on board as employees now as opposed to independent contractors. And I think the payroll cost for that 90 days is going to be something like $90,000. That could be money that could go towards hiring more people as independent contractors. And so when we look at trail on legislation that's coming on, we have to keep the pressure on our legislators to say, hey, look, it's one thing to pass a law and I think that it was well-intentioned, but when you don't look at the entire network of people that are impacted by such legislation, and when you look at the fact that the gig economy has been impacted, African Americans are the most impacted by AB5, and we have to make sure that we stay learned about this so that we do put the proper pressure on the legislators and drive the interest of the people. That's what's so very, very important and valuable. And I believe that's happening.
Well, okay, put pressure on legislators to do what?
Specifically, if they pass bad legislation like they've done with AB5, in my opinion, to work towards redrafting legislation that doesn't piecemeal the problem by industry, but really addresses the problem appropriately, and work with the community at large to understand the true workforce and put forth legislation that will overturn this. That's the first step. As legislation is moving forward, we have to stay involved and understand what's happening, right? And then flood them with the appropriate calls and letters and stay organized. This is very important stuff, because what happens is when these types of bills get passed, and AB5 went into effect in July, so a number of people lost their jobs July 1st as a result of it. And unbeknownst to them, because of AB5, right? And so we have to, people like myself who are engaged in the community, to take up these types of initiatives and spread the word and keep the word in front of us so that we can make sure we hold our electeds accountable in this regard.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. And then the website is indywork.org, INDY, and then WORK.org. And this is meant to be it's an emerging situation, but it is meant to be, from my understanding, a place where independent workers, like people who do drive for Uber and Lyft, but also if you're a freelance photographer or maybe you're a makeup artist or whatever, to come together and create different ways to protect themselves and have a better working deal.
Right.
In spite of whether there's an AB5 or no AB5 or we get rid of it or whatever, I think that's super important because the way that we work is changing, right? I mean, with the internet, you talk about working at home and such because of the pandemic, but there was a lot of changes happening before the pandemic where you can, have different kinds of hustles, side hustles that are online. And then of course we're in LA where everybody's gotta hustle because everybody's going to be an actor, a director, or a movie writer. So it's important for us to bring people together, right?
Right. And you know what, Dominic? It's bigger than that. How about the church choir director that gets paid to lead the choir as an independent contractor and now has to be hired as an employee? Most churches aren't even familiar that they have to adhere to this. So again, another side hustle or work opportunity that is limiting because now the church may not be able to afford to add that 22% payroll cost for that person to direct the choir when churches open back up. So it's as far-reaching consequences, and these are the types of things we have to reel back. And when I talk about holding our electeds accountable, I mean from the standpoint of you pass a bad bill, you have to be willing to go back and say, let's redirect it.
Right. I mean, we know that there's actually up against a break here, but we know that there's been like 40 amendments or something to that thing. So that's just a sign in itself. At this point, it'll be like the Frankenstein bill that needs to just be, reborn as a real boy.
Exactly.
Terrible analogy. Robert Sausedo, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Could you tell us one more time how to get in touch with you at Community Build?
Sure.
And by the way, thank you for the great work you guys are doing.
We certainly appreciate being a part of the community. And again, if you're looking for work, we are looking for part-time temporary workers at hiring, HIRING, at communitybuild.org. Send your information there. It's checked daily. And then we'll be following up with folks. And we're doing a couple of different ways of hiring over the next several months. So looking forward to it. And Dominic, thank you for all that you do. It's a blessing to all of us in Los Angeles to see that you are doing the great work on the front page and on the front lines. And we look forward to when you get your talk show on television.
Your mouth to God's ears. Robert Sausedo, thanks so much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Continuing our conversation, where are the good jobs finding employment under COVID-19? You can give us a call, 520-KJLH. Just add your area code, 520-5554. Radio free, 102.3 KJLH.